friends. I'm Tom Arthur, pastor of Sycamore Creek Church in Lansing, Michigan, and you're watching Our Daily Shelter. Amidst COVID-19, we are all sheltering in place, resulting in new stresses in our lives, but also new opportunities. This daily-ish live interactive video podcast is here to help you not only shelter in place, but shelter in God's grace. To find God's grace in your home and the practical situations we all find ourselves in each day these days. Or Psalm 91 verse 1 puts it, "Those who live in the shelter of the Most High will find rest in the shadow of the Almighty." In each episode of this video podcast, we get to know and learn from an expert in one area of stress we all know too well. We cut right to the chase. What's the one big thing we need to know or do to shelter in God's grace? You can join in the live Q&A by posting a question in the comments or by joining us on our live Zoom webinar at sycamorecreekchurch.org/ODS. That's Our Daily Shelter. And if you're watching on Facebook, would you share this video right now so that others can join in the conversation too and find a little bit of God's grace for today? Let's shelter in God's grace together right now. Well, friends, we've all been digesting a lot more science than usual. Coronavirus, COVID-19, DNA, replication, and on, and it's bringing back bad memories from my high school biology class. But the scientists and the science behind our current pandemic is helping us love our neighbors as ourselves, to follow Jesus more faithfully, to do that great commandment that he told us to do. To help us sort out the science today, I'm excited to be here with our very own scientist pastor, Mark Aupperlee. Mark is our campus pastor at Potterville, but before he was a pastor, he was a scientist and breast cancer researcher at Michigan State University. And you know what they say, once a scientist, always a scientist. Isn't that what they say, Mark?
That is what they say, yes.
So thanks for joining us today, Dr. Reverend Mark Aupperlee. I don't usually get to use that, like, other than just in a joking way, but that's actually true today.
It is.
So Mark, before we get to the science, we want to just shelter a little bit in God's grace. What's been a personal, unexpected moment for you of encountering God's grace amidst the craziness of our world these past 2 weeks? I mean, I know your world better than I probably know anybody's, and we've had to completely reinvent ourselves as pastors. What's been a moment of unexpected grace for you?
Yeah, we've had to completely change the way we do things. And I think in the midst of this, one of the things I've been struggling with is all the connections that I had formed, and how do you keep those connections? And one of the places I've wrestled is with the connections I've formed with the young people in our church. In Potterville, we have a junior high group that meets on Sunday nights. We've been meeting all throughout the year. I have a fantastic group of young people, and we've had really good connections. And when all this happened, I thought, what are we going to do now? Like, we've worked so hard. We've gotten to know each other. We've had so much fun. And initially I thought, I don't think it's going to work for us to connect online. Well, we tried it. We connected online. We connected on Zoom. And I think Tom has a picture of us connected online. And it's worked really well. The kids have been fantastic on that. You can see some of the people there, young people in our group. We had such a good time getting together this past Sunday night. It was totally a blessing to me to be able to connect with those young people, to have fun with them. One of the things that we did this past week to have fun was we did a scavenger hunt, and we got stuff throughout our house. There we go. There's our picture. We all went and got a hat. We tried to get fun hats. And so we disappear. We have a 1-minute timer, and we come back. And I got done with that meeting last night, and I talked to my kids, and we were praying before bed. And for both of them, the highlight of their day was getting together for that video chat. I would have never expected going into all of this that the relationships that we would form, the fun that we would have, would be able to continue even through Zoom. And it's just a total example to me of God's grace in the midst of that we're able to continue.
You're giving me a little bit of grace right now because my high school small group did not have as much fun with a scavenger hunt. So I'm going to have to up my Zoom fun game next Sunday with our high schoolers.
Oh yeah, we had the first thing we had them find was they had to find the weirdest food that they could find. This was the first week, and then I challenged them if they were willing to eat it on
Oh man.
screen. So
Okay.
there's definitely room to up your game, Tom.
All right. All right. I'm going to be like doing spoonfuls of sriracha sauce or something.
There you go.
All
Vegemite
right.
was the winner the first week.
Well, let's get to the science here because that's what you're really here to talk with us about today, which also is a grace. You hear the same news reports about the science of COVID-19 that we all hear, but I bet you understand them and digest it all better than we do. Take your PhD in science, which you don't get to use all that much as a pastor, but take your PhD and use it to help us digest the science better ourselves. What's the one really big thing that we need to know to understand and digest the science better?
The big thing that we need to know is that science changes. And that is really tough for us to get our heads wrapped around. So the information that we have today might be different tomorrow, might be different a week from now, might be different a month from now. And we don't like that. We love things to be simple. We love them to be easy to get our heads wrapped around. And this whole COVID-19 thing is not simple. It's not easy to get our heads wrapped around. I think back just a couple months ago and what we know now versus what we know then, it has completely changed. Now, I have personal experience in this because part of my research was to take the research we were doing in the lab and try to figure out how to communicate to the public. And that's the challenge when science is changing. In order for us to digest and understand things, we need it to be simple. And when you take a really complex situation like what we have here, it's tough to make simple. Now, in the midst of this, I think the big challenge as science changes is to be patient with science changing and the information that we get changing. Tom has a slide for us to see that shows truth over time. And really at its best, science is moving us toward truth. It's moving us toward the way things actually are and toward understanding them. And the way I've drawn this is you can see that when you first start on the far left, you're way far away from the truth. And then as time goes on, as you do more experiments, as you study, you begin to get closer and closer and closer to the truth. And I think that this could continue indefinitely. There's no way we will ever fully understand everything about our world or even maybe everything about COVID-19. But you can see that we can get pretty close over time to the truth. But we're really early in understanding everything about COVID-19. We're in that part of that graph where we're far away at this point from the truth. And that makes things difficult. It makes assessing this difficult. It makes making predictions really difficult. And that in turn makes messaging really difficult. How do we explain what's actually happening? Just to give an example of this, we have this ideal that science would quickly get us to reality. It's not always that simple. So if I knew nothing about the way people eat and I wanted to observe Tom and I wanted to figure out what is Tom's favorite food, I might say he couldn't tell me. I just had to figure out how do I figure out what Tom's favorite food is. Maybe I would design an experiment where I would watch Tom and I would watch him eat and I would give him different foods and I would measure how much food he ate. And if
Mark,
he
you're
liked it, I would assume that he would eat
creeping me
more.
out right now.
Well, I have human subjects now. I don't have mice, so I gotta work you in there, Tom.
All right, so everybody is watching the food that I'm eating right now.
Yeah, so we were watching the food you eat. And say I didn't know how to design this experiment, but I knew that animals eat every 15 minutes. I'm totally making all this up. So I gave Tom food every 15 minutes. What I might find is that initially he ate something, and I would be like, oh, he likes that. But then he didn't eat anything for a while. And then like 2 or 3 hours in, he ate something again. And I'd be like, oh, well, he likes that food. In the meantime, I would have ruled out a whole bunch of foods that Tom doesn't like. In reality, there's another variable at play, and that's whether Tom's hungry or not. And if I don't properly control for that, it messes up my results. That gives you just a small example of how scientists slowly move toward toward results. Look at that. I can't stop talking about church. Toward results. And it shows that sometimes there's dead ends. Sometimes you miss design and experiment. And it's a difficult process to go through. Now, in the first couple of that experiment, I might be able to communicate to everyone, well, Tom likes this food, but he doesn't like this other food. You know, he loves beef, but he doesn't like fish. Well, it could just be that I gave you beef first and you were hungry, and then you weren't hungry when you had fish. That's the way we're communicating information right now. We don't have the whole picture yet. There's ways that the experiments and the ways we're measuring things are not perfect yet. We have problems with testing right now. We have problems with communicating test results. All of this is a big challenge, and it's constantly changing again, what we're getting. The science is changing. Now, one thing I do think has been helpful in the midst of all this is to simplify, and that has been the simple message of flattening the curve. So in the midst of everything that we don't know, in the midst of everything changing, the one thing I think that is very clear is flattening the curve makes a difference. And so if we look at the instance of COVID-19 and the spread of this, if we take protective measures, if we social distance, if we don't leave our house more than we need to, if we're really regular about washing our hands, there are ways that we can reduce the spread of this disease to allow our healthcare system to keep up with it. This is an example that the whole flatten the curve thing, you hashtag flatten the curve. It's an example of one way that we were able to take the science and make it simple. Most of the other pieces of science are not simple. They're not easy to get our heads wrapped around. And that's the challenge in all of this. So be patient.
Mark, you forgot one other variable when it comes to watching what I eat, and that is not just whether I'm hungry, but whether I'm hangry.
That's a total other
variable. And then also whether right. I'm also trying to feed my children at the same time or not.
Yes. And that the things you're bringing up, Tom, just show the complexity of trying to figure something out.
Yeah.
And that's a really simple example. COVID-19, how it infects people, the time between infection to showing symptoms, who is at highest risk and why, all those things, we're still figuring it all out right now.
Yeah. Yeah. We're going to actually have, I'm working on right now, we have a retired epidemiologist from Michigan State University in our church, Kathy Brooks, and I'm working on getting her on the show, and she might get into some of those more details.
Yes.
Friends, Jeremy, our executive producer, has been monitoring the Zoom Q&A and the Facebook comments, and you can post some comments or some questions there that he's going to bring to Mark in just a moment. Marcus, I'm just taking a quick look at this. I just want you to know the science is so compelling to people that there are more people on our Zoom podcast right now than when I was talking with Rebecca Fitton about sex on Saturday. So science is sexier than sex right now. And
science is sexy.
I see some questions coming up, but before Jeremy gets here with those, is there any one last little piece you want to share before we get to those questions?
Well, I think the last piece I would share is that because science is changing and the information is changing, that as you see information, particularly on social media, be very careful about the source. Our news organizations are struggling with this. I think even our leaders, our political leaders, are struggling to keep up with the information. And so when you see something posted on social media, if it's from the World Health Organization, if it's from the CDC, those are pretty reliable sources. But this is an instance where we really do need to rely on experts. My background is in breast cancer. I am not an expert on COVID-19. I can help with science, but there are experts out there, and we really need them at a time like this to help us navigate everything. I think even a really simple search, if you're wondering about something that's been posted on social media and whether you should repost it, is to just go to Snopes and see if Snopes.com has addressed it. Often it's a really helpful thing. And be careful about the stuff that you pass on. There's a lot of false information out there. And that's all, again, caused because the science is changing and we don't understand it, and we're wrestling and grappling with it.
Man, Mark, you're just throwing me softballs here because on Wednesday, we're going to have Sarah Ashman on, who is a media literacy expert. She teaches media literacy and journalism at Holt High School. So she's going to help us navigate some of those things as well. Hey, Jeremy, why don't you come out of the background there? And you've been paying attention to the Q&A. So pitch Mark a question from our listeners and watchers.
Good afternoon, Mark. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Jeremy.
It's kind of cool to see you nerdy and all sciencey like that. Hey, Mark, here's a simple question that just came in. How clean do our groceries need to be?
So this is one of the things I've seen on social media, all these different posts. There's people recording videos of saying their stuff out. And this is an example of where we don't fully understand everything that's happening. In terms of that flattening the curve, there was a protective measures part there. And I think part of the protective measures is if you are able with groceries to not immediately take them inside. That's particularly true, I think, for people who are high risk. So if you're older, if you have pre-existing health conditions where COVID-19 infection might be a really bad thing for you, I would be more cautious. At the same time, the part of the problem we have with all of this is we can't see it, right? We can't see this virus. We just know it's out there. And don't allow yourself to just get this irrational fear where you're just constantly panicked and OCD. I don't think that's healthy either. And so the suggestions I've seen are 2 to 3 days before taking in groceries. If you can follow that, great. If not, going back to Rebecca Fitton and my wife Jana was on this podcast earlier, I think increasing your anxiety right now is not necessarily a helpful thing either. And so if you get too anxious about this, then I would relax some of that just a little bit. But again, if you're able to exercise caution, be careful.
Hey, Mark, thanks for answering some of those questions. There's probably a lot more, and perhaps you'll want to go into the Facebook comments section and reflect with people on other questions that we didn't get a chance to answer here. But how can people keep up with you if they'd like to keep up with the Scientist Pastor and what you're up to?
I think if people want to keep up with me, I am on social media. I'm on Facebook. You can check out my personal page, Mark Aupperlee. You can feel free to instant message me through Facebook. You can also, if you'd like to you have questions that we didn't get to today, you can email me at mark@sycamorecreekchurch.org. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that I'm able to. There's a lot of this that is outside my scope of expertise, but if you have a specific question, I can help you navigate some of the science information that's out there around your question.
Mark, also, how can those of us who are watching right now pray for you?
Well, I think one of the things I'm wrestling with, going back to my main point, is patience. It's really hard to be patient in the midst of this. It's hard to be patient with staying at home. It's hard to be patient with the shifting information that's coming at us. And I would really appreciate prayer in the midst of this, to be patient, to not be impatient to get back to regular life, but to allow the information to come to us, to do the necessary steps that we need to kind of get the science caught up with this, and to allow our healthcare system to absorb the impact of it.
Well, if you are familiar with me or been around me very much at all, this is probably a prayer you've heard me pray. And Marcus won't be unfamiliar to you, but I think it's appropriate for the request that you've just asked. I was first shown this prayer by a friend of mine who was studying to become a priest in the Episcopal Church at seminary, and she had MS, or multiple sclerosis, was in a wheelchair. And so she's the first one who introduced this to me. So she had to have patience every day. So friends, I just invite you to pray along with me for Mark and for all of us. This is another day, O Lord. I know not what it will bring forth, but make me ready, Lord, for whatever it may be. If I am to stand up, help me to stand bravely. If I am to sit still, help me to sit quietly. If I am to lie low, help me to do it patiently. And if I am to do nothing while sheltering in place, let me do it gallantly. Make these words more than words, and give me the Spirit of Jesus. And all who agreed said, Amen.
Amen.
Friends, join me in giving Mark some love in the comments section and thanking God for him. There's also a couple things I want you to be aware of that are coming up. First is that we continue with our daily shelter tomorrow with a guest who isn't really a guest as well. It's Kevin Fitton. Kevin is our campus worship leader at Potterville campus, but before he was a worship leader, he was a church planter in Vermont, and he's also a published author and creative writing professor. And he'll be sharing with us about the spiritual life amidst shelter in place. The second thing I want you to know is that on Sundays, we've moved our live online interactive worship service to 1 p.m. to get out of the bandwidth bottleneck of Sunday morning. And we did that for the first time yesterday, and we definitely had no problems with streaming to Facebook and Zoom and everything. So it was a good choice. And heck, you're sleeping in anyway and don't have anywhere to go to get to after church. So you might as well join us. It will be in Zoom, and each week, if possible, we will stream it to Facebook Live. And we're in a 2-week series called Growing Young, looking at what churches are doing that are connecting with 15 to 29-year-olds. And I think this topic is appropriate, especially as we've moved our ministry to a digital ministry. And we have a lot to learn from our young people. And so you can zoom in at sycamorecreekchurch.org/SL worship. That stands for South Lansing Worship. Lastly, if you really need to connect with people and see them, then join our Monday night churchwide Zoom video chat. And that's tonight, because today's Monday. It's an hour to connect with people all across the region. And last Monday, we had people all across the nation who have some connection to Sycamore Creek, all the way from Seattle and Illinois. And it's really open to everybody, whether you're a partner of Sycamore Creek or not. So zoom in at 7 p.m. at sycamorecreekchurch.org/allchat. Those links are just really simple ways to get you into the Zoom meeting. We tried to make those as simple and as memorable as possible. We'd love for you to stay connected with others through Sycamore Creek in all of these different ways. Connect with us right now through our digital connection card, sycamorecreekchurch.org/connect. That'll be posted right now in the chat section or in the comments section on Facebook. It's a way for you to connect with us and for us to connect with you more. You can also submit a prayer request through that connection card and also through the email prayers@sycamorecreekchurch.org. I think in this time, it's especially important to not shelter alone. So connect with Sycamore Creek. Friends, you've been watching Our Daily Shelter, a daily-ish live interactive video podcast and ministry of Sycamore Creek Church in Lansing, Michigan. In this time of sheltering in place, we think it's important to connect with the community. So find community every Sunday at 1 p.m. in a live interactive worship event at sycamorecreekchurch.org/SL worship. That stands for South Lansing Worship. Or every Monday night in a church-wide video chat open to everyone at sycamorecreekchurch.org/allchat. You can connect with us and we can connect with you through our digital connection card found at sycamorecreekchurch.org/connect. Submit prayer requests here on this topic or really any topic, or by email at prayers@sycamorecreekchurch.org. We've got a team of people who are praying for you daily. Download and check out our app by searching for SCCMI in your app store, and you'll find lots of great resources there, including past and current sermons. You can also join the mission of Sycamore Creek by giving financially through the app or at our website, sycamorecreekchurch.org. Your generosity helps make resources like Our Daily Shelter available for free. Take a moment and like and follow us on Facebook and share this video with your friends so they can find daily shelter in God's grace too. You may be sheltering in place, but we're here to help you shelter in God's grace. Make your home a shelter of the Most High.